Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just
Hi,
waiting one
Chica.
second. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Barian. How are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
I'm lovely. How are you feeling, Ashley?
I'm feeling great. Just so happy to be here and really excited for this conversation.
Amazing. Let's get started as people are filing in. So, welcome to the Divine Feminine Awakening. This is part of Women Who Transcend, where we help women to reflect on, reimagine, and redefine what it means to be a woman rooted in femininity. And this was an organization co created by Ashley and myself. And so, all this week, we have been having conversations around wellness. And so, I am so excited to have Barian with us today to just talk about how to live a life in flow with your flow. This is a super important conversation, and it's definitely something that I have been waiting. So I'm really excited to hear all the things that Barian will be sharing with us today and with our community. Ashley, I'm handing it over to you.
Great. So, first and foremost, I am just so excited about this conversation with Barian. She is a walking treasure trove of information when it comes to everything about living a life in flow, with your flow, how to optimize your flow, cycle syncing, how to have amazing periods. Yes, ladies, how to have an amazing period, and everything in between. And so, Barion, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our community, share a little bit about yourself, about Optimize Your Flow. And I'd love to kind of hear the story about how you got into this. Like, what drew you into this line of work?
Of course. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. As stated before, my name is Barry Berry. I am a menstrual health educator and board certified integrative health practitioner, and I literally teach women how to master their menstrual cycles. Optimize Your Flow is my signature self-paced course or program. However you want to take it is entirely up to you. And that is where I teach you how to really sync all aspects of your life and your business and everything it means to be, a modern menstruator with your cycle. I love to combine biology with practicality to really create these new menstrual realities because ultimately we have a relationship with everything in our life. And more often than not, people are like, I hate my period. I hate when I'm PMSing. And so I really wanted to shift that narrative. In regards to how I got into this space, it was really by solving my own problem. I remember I was interviewing someone for my podcast, and she's like, yeah, periods aren't supposed to be painful. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I've had a period for 14 years at the time, and it was the most agonizing part of my month. And from there, I got certified as a functional nutritionist, personal trainer. Make a long story short, I then got certified as a board certified integrative health practitioner. And here we are. I've been carrying a pale pink period flag ever since because I love, a light pink moment. And now I just really teach people about flow, right? It's not just the physical flow, but also the energy behind what it means to be in the flow state or the psychology behind it all. So that's me.
Oh, I love that, Baron. And I just love how you frame this. Even just in that introduction, I was like, oh, I'm excited to talk about my period, right? I mean, I don't think that that's like a natural first thought for many women. And we could talk about like the social conditioning around that. And maybe we just talk about that later. But Chico, why don't I hand it over to you? And let's jump into asking Barion all of our juicy questions.
Yes. So, of course, this question comes from me in the sense that I too am learning to love my flow. I've even changed the name to my moon cycle. So I'm definitely trying to embrace it more and more and not see it as a negative thing that happens every month. But, my question is, what is cycle syncing and how is it a form of self care? What would that look like?
Yeah, so cycle syncing is a process of aligning all aspects of your life with your cycle. That is what it is. It is literally just that. Another way I like to teach people this or have them think of it is think of it as a blueprint. Your menstrual cycle is a blueprint for you to live your life by. And when I talk about it as a form of self-care, it's all about being really intentional and making sure you're mindful that there's 2 weeks throughout your month, basically, where you can do high energy, extroverted things. And then there's 2 weeks throughout the month where you might want to do lower energy, more introverted things based off of your biology. And the reason I like to talk about it as a form of self-care is because we live in a society that is very much so like the busier you are, the more results you'll get, or the more clients you'll get, all of these things that have us on this hamster wheel. But I like, again, to flip the script and like shift that narrative away from doing so much and rather than doing, try to be. And so a form of self-care, right, is slowing down, being more methodical, understanding what is going on with your body, listening to what your body needs on a regular basis. Chica, you just mentioned, I don't call it a period anymore. I call it my moon cycle. So there's so many different ways to look at it, right? If you are in sync with the moon, right, you are going to call it your moon cycle. And that's you intentionally slowing down, maybe using your cycle to intentionally manifest things and bring vision to life, right? So there's all these different ways, but ultimately it comes down to, hey, let me slow down and see what I need today. There's 2 journal prompts I use every single morning. The first question I say is, how do I feel? Like physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, right? And then what do I need? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that right there always causes me to drop into wherever I'm at in my cycle. And again, practice that self-care very intentionally. So I hope that answers your question. Also, someone's raising their hand.
Yes. So essentially, what you just mentioned, a few things that I think are so well connected to what we talk about in Divine Feminine Awakening and at Women Who Transcend, which is all about connecting to your feminine energy in that being energy, like acknowledging that there's the doing energy and the being energy. And I just love the fact that you bring more awareness to that. Now, when we talk about cycle syncing, I would love to hear what that looks like in different areas of our lives. For example, whether we're at work, we're entrepreneurs, everyday relationships with others, just having this front and center. I love those 2 journal prompts, but how can we start to integrate and just be aware of what I like to call like the different seasons of our month or our cycle? And what does that look like when we actually do need to be or doing, or we're at work, or we need to execute? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So the first way I'm going to break this down is based off of biology, because I think it's really important that we just understand. Then from there, we'll move into what I like to call the balance space. And then from there, we'll talk about business, because I think ultimately we want to live in sync with our cycle so that we can have like balance in all areas or flow in all areas. So the biology of it is the first phase of your menstrual cycle. So roughly 1 through day 1 to day 7. That's called your menstruation phase. That is the first phase of your cycle. This is when you're on your period. Generally, your energy levels are a bit lower, and that's just because menstruation is a really energy intensive and exhaustive process. Then I would say the second phase of your cycle is called the follicular phase. So this is post-period, but pre-ovulation. Generally, this will be days 8 to about 14 of your cycle. And you'll notice that your energy starts to kind of ramp up again. And this is because your hormones are now on the rise. So you want to do more. You want to be out. This is one of those moments where you definitely, if you want to be extroverted, it's all warranted because you have the energy levels to support it. Then the third phase of your cycle is called ovulation. This is obviously our fertile time. This is when the egg is released from our ovaries. And I love to say that this is go time. This is when you like turn up the heat on everything. And that's because you have a surge in your hormones during this time. And I think people really need to capitalize on it. Now, with ovulation, you only ovulate for technically anywhere from 16 to 32 hours, depending on the state of your body. Usually we'll just say 24 hours, but you'll feel the effects of that for anywhere from 5 to 7 days. So this would roughly be, technically it's only day maybe 15 through 18 of your cycle, depending on when you ovulate. But this, again, is just a rough estimate. And then that fourth and final phase of your cycle, most of you probably know as PMS. I personally like to say it is called personal mystery solved, because, that's typically the time where we might be a little bit more irritable, but it's technically called the luteal phase. Now, this is when your energy levels are a little bit lower and you are transitioning kind of from that external outward facing stuff to more of that internal facing stuff and what you possibly might be needing. So that's the biology of it. And I'm going to be honest, that's all really boring, but it'll explain these other two that I'm going to share. Now, as a person who loves balance and wellness in my life, I love to say that menstruation is really going to be that time for just resting and resetting, maybe even reflecting if you want to. Just be with your body and give yourself the permission to bleed and be. Don't try to do everything for everybody. Literally just rest. During that second phase, so during our follicular phase of our cycle, we're reconnecting, right? So we're reconnecting with the external world, maybe with our clients, maybe with whoever in our life. And then our ovulatory phase, so phase 3, I say this is renew. This is when we all have our Diana Ross moment, like I'm coming out. I want the entire world to know because I'm glowing. My skin feels great. I'm feeling great. So, be social during this time. And then during that fourth and final phase, I say this is relax. This is a time where we're going to scale it back. I have a graphic on my Instagram that makes this sound so much better, trust me. But this is where you're just going to scale back your energy and just kind of chill out. Now, that is the wellness. Now, I know a lot of you are entrepreneurs and you want to get down to business. So let's talk about it, right? So during your menstrual phase, this is a time for creativity. Your brain actually has 25% more connectivity between the right and left hemispheres of your brain. So this is the time to really do the brainstorming. This is a time to come up with a new program, the new product, whatever it is. Just write down the vision or the idea. During the second phase of your cycle, so during that follicular phase, what you want to do is clarify that vision and really create the strategic plan and get ready to execute, because during that third phase, that's ovulation. That is when the heat is turned up and you have the energy to match it. That's go time. This is a time where we're launching, we're negotiating, we're talking to all the people and doing everything externally facing. And then again, during that fourth and final phase, so when you are PMSing, you're going to turn it down and we're going to reflect. We're looking at analytics. We're analyzing maybe our numbers from the month. We're looking at how much revenue we drove. We're looking at how much lead generation happened. And that's again, because your brain is switching. So during the first 3 phases of your cycle, your brain is actually a lot larger. And then during that last phase where we're a little bit more irritable, believe it or not, our brain is smaller. So I know I've said a lot. There's a lot we probably need to unpack and digest, but that's the gist of it.
Oh, I love it so much. I mean, you just broke down so many things in like 2 minutes. So thank you, Barion, for being so concise and educational, because I had a good idea of what this meant. And starting last year, I started to actually track this on my calendar. When I would think about, for example, you talked about negotiating. I was like, maybe I should have this conversation in the next few days as opposed to today. And I just started to see results. And so this stuff works, and just the heightened awareness the heightened awareness around it, I think, just also puts you in the mind space to optimize where you can, right? But I know like life sometimes is life, and you don't get to move every single puzzle piece in your favor. So like, how do we live a life in flow with our flow, even if the world around us is not really allowing us to match our phases with what we would ideally like to be doing? I'm curious if there's any tips to manage that.
For sure. So, guys, I'm a very direct person. So if I say something that offends you, please forgive me. I'm not trying to. I'm just like a very direct person. The first thing is to be proactive and not reactive. I can't tell you the amount of people I talk to who have had periods for, let's say, upwards of 10 years. And they're like, yeah, I didn't know my period was coming. How do we not know? So at this point, I want everybody, if you haven't downloaded a period tracking app, I want you to download one. I don't care if it's the Apple Health app. I use something called Thermometer. You can find it in the App Store, Google Play Store. Download a period tracking app and at least know when your period is coming. Because the one thing I think everyone needs to do is the day before their period, the first day of their period, and the second day of their period. You really just need to kind of scale back the amount of pressure you are putting on yourself or the amount of things that are on your to-do list. You can do a lot of things, but you can't do everything. So let's be proactive and make sure we know when your period is coming. Most apps will send you a notification just to give you a heads up. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is see where you can do things, dump things, and like get rid of them altogether, and see where you can delegate things, right? So if you are somebody who is a working professional, for instance, like I used to be, you can't just not show up to, let's say, a meeting, right? But can you not talk if you're on your period? Like, can you trade off roles and responsibilities with somebody else? Where can you do things, dump things, and delegate things? How can you stack your schedule where everything externally facing is maybe happening during the 2 weeks of your cycle, which are going to be that follicular, so post-period, and ovulatory phase, right before PMSing, right? So there's a good 2 week span of time where you can do a lot of things. So how can you set yourself up for success like that? How can you maybe plan your projects based off of that? And then from there, think about how you can scale things back when you're maybe on your period or when you're PMSing. It's really difficult to say, do this and do that. I'm just going to give you guys kind of the abstract things. And that's just because I don't know what your life looks like. And I do want to honor the fact that, maybe you don't have as much autonomy in your schedule. The one thing I know you can do is say, my period is coming. I need to slow down a little bit and give myself that grace and that space to really, like I said, lead and be. So hope that answers your question.
It sure does. And I'm curious, like, what you just described is having a lot of transparency with people either in the workplace or in our communities to say, hey, I'm going through this. Do you mind? Like trading roles or whatever. Do you feel that people have the comfort to have that conversation? And if they don't, do you have some suggestions on how to start broaching that subject so that it's a much more, fluid conversation? I think it's just like a touchy subject. So I'm just curious how people handle it.
It's so funny that people say this because I hear people say that talking about periods is uncomfortable or it's taboo. And, I get why, but I think it really depends on how you choose to communicate. I am somebody that has never had a problem communicating my boundaries. So it's been really easy for me to say, hey, you know what? I'm not in the headspace. And then if that person keeps pushing me, like for instance, when I worked in corporate America, I worked in construction and development for quite a bit. And this was also at the same time I was building my side hustle, which is now my full-time job. But I remember having to tell the VP that I was dealing with that, like, hey, I'm on my period. Please don't test me today. And that was easy for me because of the environment I worked in. If you were somebody who's like maybe a little bit more introverted, or you don't want to say like, hey, I'm on my period, just say, hey, you know what? I can't show up fully right now. And that's okay. I think it's really cool that we've shifted in society where people are more open to communicating, but you have to figure out how to communicate best for you. You don't have to say you're sick. You don't have to say like, I'm having a bad day. Just say, hey, my energy's a little bit lower. If that's in alignment with you, I would love to hear from anybody, Maybe we can come back to this if we do a Q&A part, but I would love to hear from anyone, maybe an example, and we can like walk through how you might communicate it. Because I know I have no problem communicating it to people who don't have periods in my life, but maybe that's not your story. So I do want to honor that, but I would also love an example. So there we go.
Yes, let's definitely do that. And then I'll ask my last question, then I'll hand it over to Chica because I feel like I'm hogging your time, Varian. So here we actually talk a lot about intuitive decision making and connecting more into the feeling. But I'm curious, what does that look like when and how can we leverage our cycle for intuitive decision making? Is that even possible? Is there a connection between the two?
It's funny you ask that. I actually have a podcast episode all about making decisions in sync with your cycle. And it's been a moment since I have actually listened to that episode. So maybe I need to take a note from my own book and listen to that episode. But when it comes to intuitively making decisions in sync with your cycle, I actually think the best time to make your decisions is when you are on your actual period. Or the week post period. And that's because there's some different chemical changes going on. So that is like the science, but intuitively, you have to trust your own gut. You really have to go with the inner permission. I can get into the science of how to make these decisions because I understand that, right? But what I might not know is your own intuition and own connectedness with your body. So if you are trying to make decisions in sync with your cycle, I would highly recommend that you critically think about things and assess things when you are PMSing. And that's just based off of what your brain is doing. Then from there, like I said, maybe perhaps making that decision when you're on your period or the week post period, depending on how you choose to show up. And it's as simple as taking your right hand, placing it over your heart, your left hand, and placing it on your stomach or your womb space and breathing deeply. Truly connect with yourself. A lot of people are afraid to actually touch their body, but it's yours. You can touch your body, especially when you're breathing, right? And just sit with yourself. Because I think that's the easiest way to really intuitively connect in. I mean, that's how I personally drop in. That's what I teach my clients. And so that's what I'm going to go with for you all.
I love that. That fits so well with some of the practices that I do, just connecting with my heart and my womb space when I need to make a decision. And there's a specific meditation that I do when I find myself in a bind or I'm not exactly sure which way to go. And so I love the fact that you've given me a little bit more structure around when and how I can do that as well.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I could do that. Chica, what's up, girl?
Yes, I'm here. So I have a question, and it's funny because all the things you've been sharing, I've been reflecting on it, especially because I was on vacation and I was kind of first annoyed that my cycle came. But then, to be honest, it allowed me to really slow down because the main point of the vacation was to slow down and reset, right? So it's interesting how you just kept iterating that when our cycle comes specifically, we need to slow down. So I'm definitely gonna keep making sure I keep to that when my period comes. And the last question for me is just, I know you've referenced in a previous podcast episode that you talked about a flow-friendly morning routine. And I'm very curious, what does that actually look like?
Oh my gosh. I feel like my morning routine evolves. As much as I evolve, so does my morning routine. But there's three constants that really stay. And when I say flow friendly, I want us to all know that flow is it's an effortless state of actually being, not necessarily doing, right? So when I say flow friendly, it should be just called slow friendly because that's ultimately what I try to do and what I encourage other people to do. But I focus on three things. The first thing is my brain and my mindset. So I make time for meditation. Then I focus in on my body and what my body needs, whether it's movement or nourishment, or it is, my skincare routine, right? It's a million steps long. Actually, it's 3 steps, but whatever. And then the last thing I focus in is on business. So what do I need to do or who do I need to be to show up best for my business? That is a flow-friendly morning routine. It is something that for me in my life right now, where I'm at, I focus on my brain and my mindset and what I need to really nourish myself right before I pour into everyone else. Then what does my body, my physical body need? Because I think it's important that we feed our spiritual body and then get into our physical body. And then from there, I get into all things related to business, or I like to call it blissness, because I love my job and my career. So that is my flow friendly morning routine. I know you guys probably want it like more specifics, but I mean, it literally changes depending on where I'm at in my cycle. So there we go.
Nope, that makes perfect sense, especially because it should be flowing, right? So if it's a rigid morning routine, then it's not really going to be in flow. So I love your answer.
Exactly. And I feel like when people have rigid routines, they feel like they have to be routine, and routines are autopilot, right? But like the essence of flow is to be, to effortlessly be. And so I try to be very rhythmic with it, which is a little bit different than routine, because this rhythm is this constant feel, right? We think about it in terms of like music and sound, but it's actually emotion. And so a flow friendly routine, if you will, is going to actually be rhythmic, and it's going to be this constant motion of what you need to fill your cup up before you fill up everybody else's. And listen, ladies, if you're not filling your cup up first, I'm going to need you to start. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I also love this like concept of blissness. Is that right? Blissness. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, if you're a working professional, maybe you have your dream job, or maybe you're working to get your dream job. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you are building a business, or you have a business. And I get so much joy from the work that I do, whether I'm working with my clients one-on-one, or I see somebody else is enrolled in my course, Optimize Your Flow, regardless of what it is. I just really enjoy it. I love it. And so that's why I call it blissness, because my business at this point in my life is my life work, and I love every second of it. Like, it brings me so much bliss. And again, once my brain is in the place it needs to be, my body feels like it needs to feel, we can get down to business, and it's easy for me.
Oh, I love that so much. And you alluded to optimize your flow. So, Baron, I'd love for you to, I mean, you have spent years putting together resources for women. And I know that I've found your platform extremely helpful just in answering questions and just overall awareness. Even if things did not relate to me, I knew that it related to somebody in my community or a woman in our community. And so I'd love for you to kind of break down your platform and how most people connect with you, and what that experience is like.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, first, thank you for letting me plug myself. But second, I love to say it's a little bit of sugar, a little bit of spice, and all things organic and nice. And that's just my personality. So my program, Optimize Your Flow, is a self-paced course really designed to help you understand the phases of your menstrual cycle based off of body. So what's actually happening in your body, how your hormones are working, balance, right, in terms of fitness, nutrition, and mindfulness, and business. How to actually utilize the phases of your cycle, your hormones, and really optimize that for business development and business advancement. It doesn't matter if you're a working professional or you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you are a homemaker. You can use this menstrual cycle of yours as this blueprint. So my course, Optimize Your Flow, teaches you how to actually do that. Now, it does get into the science because that is essential to really understanding it, but then we drop out of the biology and immediately pull it into practicality for this more fast-paced lifestyle or slow-paced lifestyle based off of where you are in life, what your needs are. So that's a little bit about my course, and I'll be honest, it is always changing. I'm actually working on some updates for it now, just because I want to make sure it is you all are equipped with the things that you need. So that's that. In terms of my other things, my podcast is, again, sugar, spice, organic, and nice. And it's probably my favorite thing that I personally get to do because it's longer form content that answers questions like, why am I in pain? How can I alleviate my pain? what is this supplement? Why is this happening? How can I shape my mind in order to support my cycle? Because there's a connection between what's happening with me mentally and emotionally, and then presenting itself physically. So that's my podcast. That's called Flow, FLOW, with Barry on Barry. You can find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then Instagram, I'd have to say, that's where I come in hot every single day with some period tips. And, it depends on the type of content you like to consume, right? So I can inform you, but I can also just have a real conversation and be a human with you. So, if you kind of want to get to know the person behind all things periods, you can come hang out with me there. And my Instagram handle is at BarryonLBarry. And yeah, there you go. Oh, I also have a discount code for you guys. Should I share it?
Yes, because we love sharing and discounts and everything for the community. So yeah, please do.
Okay, so if you go to, I think it should just be optimizeyourflow.com. You'll be able to find my signature course, and you can use the code TRANSCEND, and it's all capital, and it's 15% off the course. So you can use that. So there you go.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your generosity. And what is your Instagram handle as well for the Optimize Your Flow?
It's literally Optimize Your Flow, but Optimize Your Flow is spelled it's Optimize Your YOUR, and then Flow is spelled FLO instead of FLOW. So if you go to my personal Instagram, you'll be able to see the direct link in the profile for my business Instagram. So yeah.
Amazing. And then just to repeat that, the code for 15% off is TRANSCEND in capital letters. Thank you, Barryon, for all of the tips and the insights and resources and the generosity. I know your time is precious, and so we do appreciate that. I want to know, would you like to leave the ladies with maybe one tip? And you can choose what kind of tip it is that they should walk away from this session knowing when it comes to living a life in flow and just loving their periods.
You can't do that to me. You can't say one tip. Do you know who I
know. I'm so
okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. So my number one tip is start utilizing your menstrual cycle like this, okay? 2 weeks of high energy, 2 weeks of low energy. That is the number one thing I want us to all know. Your 2 weeks of low energy are going to be the week that you are PMSing and the week of your period. This is when you just want to scale back as much as you physically can or possibly can. Your 2 weeks of high energy are going to be the week post-period and the week you are ovulating. That is the number one tip. If you need more tips, shoot me a DM. Literally, go watch a reel, any of that. But those are going to be that's my number one.
Love it. So thank you so much, Barryon. We have loved this time together and we appreciate you. And hopefully we have you back again at some point. But before we head out, we are going to open up the stage for anybody that has a question for Barryon. We would love, love, love to talk about living a life in flow, even if you want to share different ways in which you connect with your period and your menstrual cycle. We would love to hear that. And Chica and I are also here to answer any questions related to connecting to your feminine energy or wellness. So why don't we start with you, Genesis? Welcome to the stage. We would love to hear your question or comment. Oh, Genesis, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, my